Now we will start our technical session, and I request Dr. Rakesh Kumar Singh, sir, to chair the session. He's from Gazipur Jamania PG College, Jamania PG College, Gazipur. And our presenters are Vaishnavi Chauhan, Shubham Yadav, Harendra Kumar, Abhishek Singh, Sarthak Jaiswal, Puspa Bharti, Ragini Didwania. And if anybody else want to present, may give your name and Sarthak Jaiswal, yes. So I invite first Abhijit for his presentation. You come, tell your topic.
Myself Abhijit Kashyap. I am a student of English literature, master's first year. I'm not a philosophical student, so a little bit different. I have chosen the theme of a comparative study of Eastern and Western philosophical studies. So, as we have seen that West has been always pragmatic in their approach, whereas Eastern philosophy has been more spiritual. It's rather, fluid with the nature, more with the nature, which made us one with it, They are more about rigid in their approach. So in 1930, we have seen Albert Einstein and Rabindranath Tagore having a conversation. They exchanged few words where Einstein waited on objective reality, outside humans, and Tagore were more towards subjective interpretation. For Einstein, everything is external, whereas for Tagore, everything is all internal. His view is similar to a yogi philosophy, or close to the Vedanta philosophy, where we become one with the universe, not just a part of it. Swami Vivekananda has also been a big fan of Western philosophy, as he often used to say, I love the Yankees. Although he rejected their materialistic, their reductionist thought process. He was also against the fear of God, the idea of sin and retribution, which the Abrahamic religion later added on after the fall of Constantinople, the Greco-Roman and the Mesopotamian, missionaries attempt to make money out of man's suffering, etc. W.B. Yeats, a very brilliant poet, dramatist, he has shown in his work The Countess Kathleen, where he has shown two devils disguised as merchants, where they take the benefit from the plight of innocent peoples. Though Swami Vivekananda has also applauded the West's organizational skills and the constant urge for advancement, which later resulted in capitalism, which we are seeing in today's world taking over it. As for the synthesis of Western and Eastern philosophies, we can easily see that from the literature point of view, the transcendentalists of America and Germany were influenced by Upanishads. We see the glimpses of Gita in the work of T.S. Eliot. In the work of Rabindranath Tagore, we see the influence of Shelley, Petrarch, Goethe, Wordsworth, Kelly, and many more brilliant poets and dramatists. Tagore breathed new light into the Indian literature via his brilliance and perfect synthesis of Eastern and Western philosophies. The West has no doubt made life easy for the world with its technological and scientific advancement. It has given many great names like Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, etc., who paved the way for Western philosophy. However, now as the whole of the world has become one, and we get to know about each little bit incident happened in like 500, 600, 5,000 kilometers away from here to the different part of the globe. We are seeing everything as one. Now everyone is appreciating the Eastern philosophy and is following the Indian way of life. They are all embracing yoga, meditation, and various other spiritual means. The hero-centric approach of the West was long followed, where a hero sacrifices himself or herself for the sake of the world, to whom the biggest example is Jesus Christ himself. Though the Eastern philosophy teaches us to fight the inner conflict via spiritual means, Buddha is the biggest example of that, who after seeing the sorrows moved towards nature and first ended his inner conflict and later propagated his knowledge to the world. The proofs that we are not only the part of this universe, rather we are one with the universe or cosmos, and no matter how much we made materialistic advancement, we will eventually find peace and solace in the yogi way of life, Hindu way of life. Thank you.
Ms. Puspa Bharti, you come for your presentation.
Good evening everyone. I am Puspa Bharti, student of MA first year English department, and I am present here to point my views on the Rousseau's influence on Romanticism, a philosophical and artistic odyssey. The present paper aims to explore the profound influence of Rousseau on the Romantic movement, both philosophical and artistically. Rousseau, a pivotal figure of the Enlightenment era, revolutionized thought with his emphasis on individual freedom, emotional authenticity, and the innate goodness and humanity. His famous work, The Social Contract, challenged the prevailing notion of societal structure and government, advocating for a more egalitarian and communal existence. This motion of return to a more natural and authentic state resonated deeply with the Romantic thinkers. Rousseau's ideas find a resonance in the concepts such as Advaita Vedanta and Upanishadic notion of Atma. Like Indian philosophy, Rousseau emphasizes the importance of self-realization and the innate goodness of humanity. The 18th century philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau stands as a pivotal figure whose ideas ignited the flames of the Romantic movement. Emerging in the late 18th century, Romanticism embraced Rousseau's rejection of reason in favor of emotion, intuition, and imagination. His writing, The Individual, State of Nature, The Social Contract, and the Authenticity of Human Emotion laid the groundwork for the Romantic movement, inspiring artists, writers, and thinkers to explore the theme of nature, emotion, and human conditions, and challenge the constraints of societal norms. Rousseau's philosophy revolves around the concept of the noble savage and the innate goodness of humanity in its natural state. Rousseau's first book, New Heloise, covers the theme of the beauty of nature and humble life. He opposed and degraded the polluted life of cities areas. His central claim of his work is that human beings are born good and are corrupted by the outside traditions and the political and educational institutes and governments. Such institutes cause social disparity, corruption, and misery that resulted in present-day society. His solution to suffering was to change the political and legal institution. He gave his slogan, "Back to Nature," which means reform can only occur by people returning to nature and the innate state of human righteousness. And in his another book, Social Contract, he argues that people sacrifices some of the individual freedom in exchange for general good. Even in the Indian philosophy offers a rich tapestry of thought that shares a certain affinities with Rousseau's ideas, concepts such as the harmony between humanity and nature, the pursuit of self-realization, that is Atman, and the cultivation of inner wisdom, that is Jana, resonate with Rousseau's emphasis on the individual connections to the natural world and the quest for authenticity. Okay. In the conclusion of this paper, Jean-Jacques Rousseau's influence on Romanticism transcends geographical and cultural boundaries, resonating with themes found in Indian philosophy. By exploring Rousseau's ideas alongside those of Indian philosophers, we gain a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of philosophical traditions and the universal quest for truth, beauty, and transcendence. Thank you.
Mr. Abhishek Kumar Singh.
मेरा नाम अभिषेक सिंह है। हम हिंदी में ही अपना बोलना चाहेंगे। मैं इंग्लिश लिटरेचर का छात्र हूँ, MA फर्स्ट ईयर। कि हाउ आई एम माई जस्ट फोकस ऑन कि हाउ टू थिंग्स ऑफ सांख्य फिलोसफी इज प्रेवलेंट इन एडोनाइस पोएम। सो टू एलिमेंट इज प्रकृति एंड पुरुष। तो इसमें प्रकृति मतलब ये नेचर नहीं है रोमांटिक वाला, इसमें प्रकृति मतलब बिफोर क्रिएशन, मतलब जो बहुत सारी चीज़ें पहले प्रकृति निर्माण के पहले जो थी वो एक केओटिक सिचुएशन में थी, वो सब बिखरी हुई थी। तो उसमें सांख्य के दार्शनिकों ने उस केओटिक सिचुएशन को बोला कि ये वो जो प्रकृति है वो प्रकृति क्या है, मैटर है, और पुरुष लाया वो कॉन्शियसनेस है। प्रकृति में बोले कि ये प्रकृति जो है वो स्वयं अपना निर्माण नहीं कर सकती उसको, और प्रकृति को उन्होंने सर्वगर्भा कहा है कि प्रकृति में सब कुछ है, तो वो लेकिन उसमें कॉन्शियसनेस नहीं है। अगर तो उसको कॉन्शियस इसलिए उस चीज़ को कैसे क्रिएट करना है, उस केओटिक सिचुएशन को कैसे एक मूर्ति रूप देना है, कैसे इस संसार को बनाना है, तो उनने दूसरा एलिमेंट इंट्रोड्यूस किया, पुरुष। तो पुरुष कॉन्शियसनेस है, तो उसमें एक एनोलॉजी के माध्यम से उसको समझाने की कोशिश की कि जब जैसे एक अंधा है और एक लंगड़ा है, तो अंधा तो भाई उसको दिखेगा नहीं, लंगड़ा को दिखता है, तो वो दोनों लोग जो है आपस में कोलैबोरेशन करके चीज़ों वो अपने आप को वो जंगल जो है क्रॉस करेंगे। तो वैसे वो तो अंधा था ये प्रकृति, तो उसको कॉन्शियसनेस पुरुष मिल गया और उन दोनों ने आपस में सहयोग करके इस सृष्टि का निर्माण किया, ऐसा सांख्यवादियों का मानना है। और कैसे ये चीज़ हमारे सैलीस के एडोनाइस में है, तो सैलीस के एडोनाइस में उनने वो सैलीस ये एक मेमोरी में लिखा गया है, कीट्स की मेमोरी में। तो कीट्स को उन्होंने इमोर्टलाइज करने की कोशिश की कि भाई ये कीट्स जो हैं, कीट्स और ये ग्रीफ, ये तो ये जो हमारी साइक्लिक नेचर है, ये चीज़ें बनती हैं बिगड़ती हैं, जैसे प्रकृति सर्वगर्भा है, इसी सब निकलता है और इसी में सब समा जाता है। लेकिन जो कीट्स है और उसका जो ग्रीफ है, कीट्स के मरने पे उनको दुख होता है, ये ख़त्म होने वाली नहीं है, ये इस चीज़ को ट्रांसडेंड कर जाएंगी। तो ऐसा कीट्स ने उस चीज़ को माना है। तो सर हमारा यही तक बात था।
Ms. Ragini Didwania.
Good evening to our esteemed guests, our respected professors and all the members of the audience present here. I am Ragini Didwania from the English department and I am here to present my views on the topic existentialism and the absurd in Eugene Ionesco's play The Rhinoceros. So, existentialism seeks to deal with issues regarding the meaning, purpose and value of human existence, as we already know. Jean-Paul Sartre, in Existentialism and Humanism, underlines that existentialism is a doctrine which renders human life possible. Existentialist thoughts include existential crisis, apprehension, anxiety in an absurd world, free will, originality, courage and virtue. Eugene Ionesco, a central playwright under the theatre of the absurd, explores the theme of alienation, irrationality and absurdity in the meaninglessness of life and communication, while also critiquing the traditional forms of the play. He presents the delightful, ridiculous and horrifying aspects of individualized human life through both the comic and tragic modes of experience. Eugene Ionesco's play The Rhinoceros occurs in a small provincial town and the action unfolds in an ordinary setting, with the town serving as a microcosm of the society. In the course of the play, all the inhabitants of the town turn into rhinoceroses. The actual rhinoceros that you would see in a zoo, yes, symbolizing a surrender to mob mentality and specifically the Nazi ideology. Berenger is a central character in the play who stands as a symbol of rebellion, defying a prescribed order as he presents himself according to his own free will, with disheveled hair, reeking of alcohol, with crumpled clothes and without a tie. He is simply bored of a monotonous life guided by the same ideologies. While all the other characters in the play, like John, the waitress and the grocer's wife, are deeply affected by the sound of the rhinoceros approaching, Berenger lies unaffected without appearing to have heard anything. The play explores a sense of alienation and isolation that individuals experience in a society where conformity and herd mentality prevails. The protagonist, Berenger, often feels disconnected and lonely as he pursues his free will and resists the transformation into a rhinoceros like everyone else. Existential angst, sometimes also called existential dread, anxiety, is a negative feeling arising from the experience of human freedom and responsibility. The character Berenger in the play is simply disinterested in the life of the town, which has very little amusement to offer. He listens to his individual self while claiming, "I am not made for the work I am doing. Every day at the office, 8 hours a day." Existentialism is usually criticized for being an invitation for people to dwell in quietism of despair. However, Sartre contends that it cannot be regarded as a philosophy of quietism, since it defines man by his action. Berenger presents himself as a person utterly full of despair, having been equally oppressed by solitude as well as the company of other people. However, existentialism does not discourage men from action, as it tells that there is no hope except in his action, and the one thing that permits him to have a life is actually the deed. Having ignored the teachings laid by God, individuals may do what they prefer and are rendered ineligible of criticizing the views or actions of other people. The characters in the play are betrayed by the illusion of logic whenever they try to exploit the illusion to justify the unjustifiable. The playwright projects the existential concern that true meaning lies in one's responsibility towards one's own actions rather than conforming to rules, conventions, and thought patterns which are laid in advance. Through the process of entire town of people turning into rhinosauruses and readily giving into widely spread ideologies, the playwright projects how individuals may pursue an independent line of thought and avoid surrendering to victimization even in the face of adversity. Thank you.
Ms. Riya Gupta. Riya Gupta.
Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Riya Gupta, Research Scholar, Department of Philosophy and Religion, BHU. So, the title of my paper is Indian Feminism, a Battle Addressing Religious and Caste Oppression. This paper looks at the background of the rise of feminism and women's movement in India. Worldwide, there is a link between feminism and women movement. In the Indian context, the women movement is a much earlier phenomena and the term feminism is a modern one. Feminism comprises social, cultural and political movement which advocates for the equality of women. The women's movement began in early 19th century in the pre-independence era. Some educated Indian elite through their connection with the West were very much acknowledged about the idea of equality and liberty. This later on extended the concern with a large number of issues like political participation, dowry, equality in workplace, equal pay, availability of birth control methods, right to abortion, right to sexual pleasure, and Dalit women's right. Though a lot has been achieved, the struggle is still going on. One of the important setbacks for Indian feminists is the culture and religious division in India. The caste and religious divide of India has increased the tension and struggle for most Indian feminists. For we cannot overlook the differences, as some evidences has proven that women of one religious group are far more deprived of their rights than the other. The same theory follows with the caste divide. The gap is so huge that some women are fighting for their representation in politics, and then there is another section who are deprived of education and do not even know the term feminism. So, the history of feminism in India is regarded as mainly a practical effort and most non-existent. Compared to some other countries, there has been only theoretical writing in feminism. Pre-colonial structure and women's role in them reveal that feminism was theorized differently in India than in the West. Colonial essentialization of Indian culture and reconstruction of Indian womanhood as the epitome of that culture through social reform movement result in political theorization in the form of nationalism rather than as feminism alone. The idea of women as powerful is accommodated into patriarchal culture through religion. In India, the notion of goddess worship, the heroism of motherhood, has created an illusion in the name of feminism. Indian feminist scholars and activists have to struggle to crave a separate identity for feminism in India. Indian women negotiate survival through an array of operative practical family structure, age, status, marriage, procreation, dowry, caste, community, etc. Several communities in India, like Bengalis, exhibit matriarchal tendencies, and Sikh culture is relatively gender neutral. Feminism in India is also not static. It keeps on evolving through time and need. First phase of feminism in India led to social movement like widow remarriage, restriction on child marriage and sati pratha. And second wave started with Gandhi's struggle for independence, when women participated in the freedom movement. and for the first time they came out in public space. Many organizations like AIWC and National Federation for Indian Women came into existence. Women participation in freedom movement developed their critical consciousness about their role and rights in independent India. After independence, Indian Constitution granted right and equality to women. As opposed to West, feminism in India is started by men. Later, it was joined by women. Some of the influential men were Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Jyotiba Phule, Ambedkar, Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar, etc. In India, the real problem with feminism is religious and caste difference. Religious laws and personal law often conflict with Indian constitution, eliminating rights of women. Society of India is patriarchal, and most of the culture follow patriarchal kinship, where the father or husband is the head of the family and rule over the women. Education ratio of women in India is also very, some people say feminism is outdated, but the reality is very much different, especially in a developing country like India, as there is a section of women talking about their rights of equal pay, representation in politics, right to sexual pleasure. Then there is another section of women who don't even know the term feminism. Right. So despite various efforts, the gap is so huge. Since we cannot just overlook the religious and cultural dominance in India, hence it is the work of Indian feminists to examine these gaps and work accordingly. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Anupam Kumar, Kamlesh Yadav.
Thank you, ma'am. Myself, Anupam Kumar from Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University. I am a research scholar. I will present my paper in Hindi. Topic is देवी प्रसाद चट्टोपाध्याय, एक समकालीन भौतिकवादी भारतीय दार्शनिक। देवी प्रसाद चट्टोपाध्याय का समय 1918 से 1993 के बीच रहा है। तो ऐसे भारतीय दर्शन का इतिहास 2500 साल से 3000 साल पुराना है। मनुष्य का इतिहास करीब 10 लाख साल पुराना है। यह वह समय था जब विकास की प्रक्रिया में मनुष्य पशु जगत से आगे बढ़ा था। प्रारंभ में प्राकृतिक शक्तियों से संघर्ष करते हुए हर मनुष्य का विकास हुआ। इस संघर्ष के दौरान प्रारंभिक मानवों ने अपने को एक दूसरे पशुओं से अलग करके प्रकृति पर अपना कार्य कौशल दिखाकर उसे अपने अनुकूल परिवर्तित करना शुरू किया। प्रकृति से संघर्ष करते हुए मनुष्य की कई नई प्रसुप्त सोई हुई शक्तियाँ का विकास हुआ और मनुष्य की यह कोई आध्यात्मवादी या जादुई शक्तियाँ नहीं थी, बल्कि प्रकृति के साथ संघर्ष के दौरान विकसित हुई थी। इस तरह ज्यों मनुष्य का सामूहिक श्रम, शिकार करना, खेती करना बढ़ता गया, त्यों मनुष्य के चिंतन का विकास होता गया। चिंतन के विकास की इस अवस्था तक पहुँचने में मनुष्य को लाखों वर्ष लगे। यह कोई साल, 2 साल या 50 सालों की बात नहीं है। इस प्रकार जब से मानव समाज सामूहिक अस्तित्व में आया, तब एक साथ एक जगह पर रहकर सामूहिक रूप से श्रम करने लगा और इस सामूहिक श्रम के फलस्वरूप अधिशेष अतिरिक्त उत्पादन बचने लगा। तब मानव समाज के कुछ लोगों के पास खाली समय मिला और समाज के अवकाश प्राप्त वर्ग के कुछ लोगों ने इस अवकाश समय में चिंतन करना शुरू किया। इसी तरह से यहाँ से प्रारंभिक दर्शन की शुरुआत हुई। देवी प्रसाद चट्टोपाध्याय कहते हैं कि प्राचीन काल में मनुष्य जब प्राकृतिक शक्तियों एवं जीव जंतु से संघर्ष कर अपने जीवन यापन के लिए जंगली जानवरों का शिकार कर रहा था, तब वर्तमान समय की भांति न उसके पास दार्शनिक चिंतन करने का समय था, न ही इस तरह के किसी प्रकार की कोई चिंतन की आवश्यकता थी। उस समय उनके लिए एकमात्र उद्देश्य जंगली जानवरों से खुद को, अपने समूह की रक्षा करना व भोजन करने के शिकार करना था। किसी भी तरह का अमूर्त चिंतन, आदर्शवादी चिंतन के लिए कोई जगह नहीं थी। आदिम युग का समाज पूर्णतः भौतिकवादी जीवन पद्धति के ऊपर निर्भर था। न किसी अलौकिक विचार के लिए कोई जगह था, न ईश्वर की आवश्यकता थी, न स्वर्ग नरक का डर, न ही पाप पुण्य की चिंता। मनुष्य को सिर्फ अपने श्रम व मेहनत में भरोसा था। बिना श्रम किए हुए जीवित नहीं रह सकते थे। श्रम ही उनके जीवन का आधार था। इस समय के समाज में आम समझ थी कि जीवन का आधार श्रम है और बिना श्रम किए अपने अस्तित्व को नहीं बचाया जा सकता है, क्योंकि उस समय अधिशेष जैसी कुछ बचता नहीं था। जैसा कि वर्तमान समय में देखते हैं कि बिना श्रम किए भी एक वर्ग दूसरे वर्ग के मनुष्य द्वारा किए जा रहे अतिरिक्त श्रम द्वारा अधिशेष पर जीवन यापन करते हैं। इस तरह प्राचीन जीवन वर्तमान समय से काफ़ी भिन्न था। यूँ कहें, प्राचीन जीवन यापन काफ़ी सरल और बिना उलझ के चल रही थी। यही कारण है कि पूरी दुनिया के अलग अलग हिस्सों में दर्शन का प्रारंभ भौतिकवादी दर्शन के रूप में हुआ, क्योंकि प्राचीन युग का जीवन पूर्णतः भौतिकवादी था। मार्क्स लिखते हैं पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी में मात्र लिखते हैं, मनुष्य की चेतना उसके अस्तित्व को निर्धारित नहीं करती, बल्कि यह उनका सामाजिक अस्तित्व है जो उनकी चेतना को निर्धारित करता है। वर्तमान समय की बात करें तो भारतीय दर्शन की वैश्विक स्तर पर पहचान आध्यात्मिक या कहें भाववादी दर्शन के रूप में होती है, या यूँ कहें कि भारतीय दर्शन और आध्यात्म एक दूसरे के पर्याय हैं, तो इसमें कोई भी अतिशयोक्ति नहीं होगी। भारतीय दर्शन की इस एकांगी अध्यात्मवादी पहचान को तार्किक तथा तथ्यात्मक तरीके से नकारने का श्रेय देवी प्रसाद चट्टोपाध्याय को जाता है। भारतीय दर्शन में भौतिकवाद को मजबूती से स्थापित करने में देवी प्रसाद चट्टोपाध्याय का नाम अग्रणी है। देवी प्रसाद चट्टोपाध्याय अपने दार्शनिक कृतियों व शोध कार्यों से भारतीय दर्शन की एकांगी पहचान को नकारते हुए स्थापित करते हैं कि यहाँ भी भौतिकवादी दृष्टिकोण की सुदीर्घ परंपरा रही है, जिसने धर्म शास्त्रों से नियंत्रित वेदांत एवं अन्य दर्शनों के बरक्स ओके सर। तो देवी प्रसाद चट्टोपाध्याय का जो मुख्य पॉइंट है मैं वो रख देता हूँ, काफ़ी लंबा पेपर है। देवी प्रसाद चट्टोपाध्याय ने सर्वप्रथम भारतीय दर्शन के ऊपर जो एकांगी पहचान है आध्यात्मवादी आइडियलिस्ट का, उन्होंने खारिज किया और बताया कि दुनिया में हर जगह जो दर्शन का विकास हुआ है वो आइडियलिज्म और मेटेरियलिज्म के संघर्ष से हुआ है, आदर्शवाद और भौतिकवाद के संघर्ष से हुआ। तो ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता कि भारत में सिर्फ आध्यात्मवादी दर्शन का विकास हुआ है। तो इस तरह से वो कई सारी चीज़ों को हमारे बीच रखते हैं। मैं आखिरी पैराग्राफ पढ़ देता हूँ। अंत में देवी प्रसाद चट्टोपाध्याय के दार्शनिक कार्यों के महत्व को बताते हुए जर्मन दार्शनिक वाल्टर रूवेन ने लिखा है, आज भारत को अपनी परंपरा के आधार पर अपने दर्शन का विकास करना है, और जब तक भारत में वर्ग रहेंगे और वर्ग संघर्ष चलता रहेगा, जब तक दर्शन के क्षेत्र में दो प्रमुख धाराएं भौतिकवाद और भाववाद एक दूसरे के विरुद्ध संघर्ष करती रहेगी, भाववादी वेदांत की पुनर्व्याख्या से स्वयं को संतुष्ट करते रहेंगे, जबकि भौतिकवादी देवी प्रसाद चट्टोपाध्याय के रास्ते पर चलकर उसे भारतीय द्वंद्वात्मक भौतिकवाद का निर्माण करेंगे जो वर्ग संघर्ष में विजय प्राप्ति के लिए अनिवार्य है। थैंक यू।
Mr. Sarthak Jaiswal.
Good evening, everyone. I, Sarthak Jaiswal, is exploring themes of Indian thoughts in Emerson's poem through the lens of Transcendentalism. Transcendentalism was an American philosophical literary movement encompassed free thinking in religion, intuitive idealism in philosophy, individualism in literature, and optimism in social reforms. Emerson believed it was a residue in one's mind after emptying traditional influence. Central to his works were concepts from Indian philosophies, particularly the idea of Brahma and his interest in the Bhagavad Gita. Some of his essays, such as Self-Reliance, deal with a theme that is very much similar to the concept of karma. Through a discussion of Brahma, Bhagavad Gita, and the laws of karma, we can explore how Emerson was deeply influenced by the Indian philosophical and religious thoughts. From Brahma, there are three aspects that is formed in formless Brahma, Atma, and Maya. When we talk about form and formless Brahma, we can say that Emerson's views on transcendentalism was closely linked in the concept of Brahma, consisting of Ara and Apara Brahma. Ara and Apara Brahma represent the formed and formless aspects of Brahma. Emerson believes in the human potential to achieve the immortality of God through good deeds and justice, establishing a union between the formed and formless Brahma. When we talk about Atma, the metaphysical concept of Atma synonymous with the Supreme Self or Spirit, with another crucial aspect. Emerson resonates with the Upanishadic idea that knowing one's essential self leads to the understanding of the entire world. In Emerson's Divinity School's address, he constructs his own idea, the oversoul, emphasizing a direct, unimmediate relationship between the individual and the eternal soul. The third aspect is Maya. Maya, a significant concept in Indian philosophy, fascinated Emerson. In his poem, Maya, he explored the deceptive power of Maya, reflecting on its dual nature as both product and the power of creativity. Another aspect that influenced Emerson was the Bhagavad Gita. It is a Bhagavad Gita. Emerson was particularly struck by the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, the first of the books. It was a record of conversation between Bhagwan or God in the form of Krishna and Arjuna. Krishna sends this message to the mankind through Arjuna as does Christ through the 12 disciples. Krishna says, through unborn Father Atma is eternal, through Lord of all beings, yet using my own nature. I came into existence using my own Maya. Krishna sends himself. In conclusion, immersion explored of Indian philosophical concepts including Brahma, Atma, Maya, Bhagavad Gita and Karma deeply influenced his thoughts on transcendentalism and has shaped his perspective on spirituality and human existence. Thank you.
Kamlesh Yadav.
Good evening. I am Kamlesh Yadav from Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University. I am going to present a paper on the topic, the idea of secularism and its challenges, a present discourse. So basically we live in a society where we treated as an individual. So this concept of individuality is embedded in the modern concept of state, which is democratic in nature. So with the concept of democracy, what it is, the secularism is interconnected with the concept of democracy. So basically, if there is a government, then the nature of it should be a secularist. That is, a person should not treat themselves or ourselves as a special being from another person on the basis of religion. So, but as of now, what we see that day by day, the religious role is increasing in the public debate, the public discourse. So people do not hesitate to show their character on the name of religion. It shows that one person is special from among others. As I hinted that we are an individual, so individual is a part of society, and in society there is a interest and there is a different idea of another person, another individuality. So what should we care? That we should take care of another's interest, another's feelings also. We should give it respect to. So, but this is contrasting in nature, that at public places we sloganeering a special religious slogans, and there is hate speech going on. So these things basically demean the meaning of secularism. So basically I will tell you what is the concept of secularism here. So basically we know about the political meaning of secularism, which basically the famous quotation with that is the separation of religion and the state. In very old way you can say that the separation of church and the state, but in Indian context we can say that it is separation of the state and the religion. But I'll focus more on the basically philosophical conception of secularism. So basically we see that what is the philosophical conception of secularism, that it believes in present life, it believes in this life. On the other hand, what religion actually claims, that there is a life after death, and then we believe in that religious person believe in otherworldliness, which secularism, basically philosophical secularism, denounce it. It believes in this worldliness. It believes that living in this life, we can solve our problem with the help of the society and its cooperation. Okay, so basically, and morality, which is claimed to be a product of religious outcome, but it can be possible without the religion. It's a claim of basically secularism, and then there should be a scientific temperament regarding our way of life. So this is the basic, basically tenets of philosophical secularism. So, and we see the debates that basically the models of secularism that we see in basically Parth Chatterjee and the Akhil Bilgrami and then Ashish Nandi. They think that India had been secular in ancient time, that there is a pluralism involved. There are living many sects and thought groups living simultaneously in our society. But basically, there is a philosopher from JNU, which name is Rajiv Varga, who sees that which form of secularism is suited to India. That name is contextualism form of secularism. It means that there is peculiar form of secularism in India, that it can engage in the matter of religion and it can dissociate itself also when it depends on the context. So basically, I am concluding my point is that we should treat as a citizen and okay. So we should basically treat as a citizen, and that we should understand that there is a different opinion of other person, and we should not at least preach inequality and show disrespect to other. Thank you.
सभा में उपस्थित सभी विद्वज्जनों को मेरा प्रणाम। मेरा नाम शुभम यादव है। मैं शोध छात्र दर्शन शास्त्र विभाग महात्मा गांधी काशी विद्यापीठ से हूँ। मेरे शोध का शीर्षक है डॉक्टर भगवान दास के दर्शन में नैतिक परामर्श। 21वीं सदी का मानव एक उत्कृष्ट मानसिकता वाला व्यक्ति है, जिसने संपूर्ण समाज को एक नई राह पे लाके खड़ा कर दिया है। भौतिकता की नवीन खोजों ने तो मानव समाज को साधन संपन्न से पूर्ण कर दिया है, उसके सोचने का दायरा बढ़ा दिया है, लेकिन नीतिगत विचारों में एक आमूल परिवर्तन आ गया है। भौतिकता की दौड़ से थकने के बाद उसके मानसिक संतुलन को बनाए रखने के लिए धर्म और सामाजिक आचार शक्ति की आवश्यकता है। मानव की आकांक्षा पूर्ण करने के लिए भौतिक साधन मौजूद है, पर मानसिक शांति की खोज में वह भटकता रहा है। ऐसे समय में महापुरुषों के विचारों और नीतिगत विचारों की ओर मुड़ना होगा, जहां उसे जीवन के मूल्यों की कल्पना करने का मौका प्राप्त होता है। इसमें उसने नीतिगत विचारों का सामाजिक तथ्य से रूबरू होना होगा। उसके अंदर एक आध्यात्मिक जिज्ञासा को उदित करना होगा, जहां उसे पूर्ण मोक्ष और ज्ञान की प्राप्ति हो सकती है। भारतीय नीति दर्शन में की परंपरा सत्य, अहिंसा, प्रेम, सत्यता और एकत्व की परंपरा है। यहाँ ऋषि मुनियों देवताओं के देश है, जहाँ प्रेम, दया और करुणा का एक अनुपम धारा बहती है। और जिस धरती पर राम, कृष्ण, गौतम बुद्ध, महावीर, कबीर, गांधी और भगवान दास विवेकानंद का जन्म हुआ, जिनके नीति दर्शन ने संपूर्ण विश्व के विचारों को झकझोर कर रख दिया। विवेकानंद के द्वारा दी गई समाज की परिभाषा जीना है तो दूसरे के लिए जियो कहने का तात्पर्य मानवतावादी धार्मिक दृष्टिकोण को सामने लाना है। ऊपरी आवरण नहीं बल्कि सत्य और अध्यात्म के देश का निर्माण करना है। स्वच्छ समाज का निर्माण वसुधैव कुटुंबकम की नीति की भावना से ओतप्रोत होना है। आने वाली पीढ़ियों को नई राह दिखाना है। धर्म और नीति ही जीवन है। धन्यवाद।
Thanks to all. Now I request Dr. Rakesh Kumar Singh sir for his remark.
In this technical session, so many deliberations have been shared through the dais, and as many as 9 papers are presented by the scholars of different disciplines. Among them, Abhijit Kashyap, very good mark, very good deliberation, in which about Western philosophy, cosmology, yoga, all these topics have been discussed and correlated in order to give voice to his thoughts, whatever he has created here. So I am very thankful to Abhijit Kashyap. Next, Pushpa Bharti, Rousseau's concept of social contract, she has chosen, and in which she has correlated Vedanta, emotion, intuition, and exploring things of nature also. Human being born good but corrupted by society, all these things have been discussed that day. So, very good essays for Pushpa Bharti. Next, Abhishek Singh presented a paper in which he quoted several romantic poets also, and he talks about consciousness. Samdedarshan, it's one of the romantic poets. He has quoted also, and in that deliberation, he has presented his thoughts about these things. Ragini Dirwani, next one, and Ragini Dirwani focused upon existentialism, and different existentialists have been a part of the discussion and deliberation in that paper. So very, very thankful to Ragini. Next, Priya Gupta, and she has thrown light on feminism and in different layers and aspects, what are the challenges and what are the solutions, and which way feminism in India has been originated, and Indian feminism, how witnessing the society, the system, other events, and that practices also. She has thrown light upon that. And Arnab Kumar, just the part of his study, historical study of human development. In historical perspective, he to be able to see the human development. So very good paper he has presented. Sarthak Jaiswal, different aspects of Indian philosophy, Atma, Maya, Bhagavad Gita, he has quoted also. So I think very deep thinking he has extended it and to the paper. And after that, Kamlesh, concept of democracy, political values, separation of church and state. So the right topic he has chosen, and I think it's a very good paper. And next, last is Shubham Yadav. Shubham Yadav talks about limited aspirations and created challenge before society. A good society can be created through love, cooperation, non-violence, all these entities, good entities, he has elaborated in that way. So we are very thankful, this class is very thankful, and the Department of Philosophy, UPC College is very much thankful to the presenters, and this technical session is ended. Thank you.
Thank you.